Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lore of Braunhaven. Today, we're going to be talking about the dwarves of the Braunhaven region, and to a lesser extent, I guess we'll touch base with the gnomes as well. So, the dwarves of the Braunhaven region, they are a long-lived race. Not as long as elves, to most at least to most humans, and maybe even to most halflings. Elves are considered nearly immortal. In fact, they're often referred to as the immortality of the elves, which is a bit of a misnomer, but it is not one that the elves themselves tend to dissuade. The dwarves of the region generally live to about 270, 275 years is about the natural lifespan of a dwarf. You do see some going slightly above that. um, they they tend to live in clans, and the different dwarven clans, of course, go out and their big thing is you know forming a new mine. And most of the mines, when they dig them, um, after they have dug down quite a ways, they will go back to the top of the mine and more or less smooth it out, rather than just having a hole in the ground. They will they will turn the first top levels of the mine into an actual citadel. And those dwarves that are capable of doing that are thought to be successful. They have had success in their life. The big thing with dwarves is family. It is promoted for dwarves to marry, take members of their fellow clansmen, or even to attract others and to go off, find do some prospecting, find a suitable spot to mine, create a mine, and then turn the top levels of that mine into your own citadel, thus creating a new clan, your own clan. And the main reason for this is that of all the races, dwarves have the lowest fertility rate. And so dwarven children are not as prominent as they are in dwarven citadels and cities. They're not as prominent as you might see in like a human civilization. There's kids everywhere. Um, they're always underfoot. But in dwarven citadels, you see much less of this. There's just not as many children, and for this reason, the whole familial unit is of major concern to the dwarves. And they really promote the idea of forming your own clan, going off and um, making more dwarves. That's the whole thing. Now, for most dwarven families, one, maybe two kids is common. And two, a family that has two children is considered blessed. Um, they just most dwarven relationships, the majority of them don't produce children. And that's just how it is for dwarves. But thankfully, they're also long lived, so um, it's not a huge problem. But the dwarves do face a situation of attrition, and part of the problem in this is also in that dwarves are they take honor very seriously. You don't dishonor your clan, you don't dishonor your citadel, and the whole topic of dishonor or of honor among the dwarves can take there's no one set of rules, and so it can be very nebulous. And dwarves generally, both male and female, if they feel that they have dishonored themselves or their clan, and on the flip side, the clan can say that they have dishonored them, and a lot of times that can be political. But those dwarves will go off and become generally a slayer that goes off trying to fight bigger and bigger and bigger things um, until it is killed, and so or until they are killed. And so the biggest issue with dwarves is, aside from the fact that there are a lot of terrible things that come up out of the ground, um, they kind of have this internal conflict that they are battling themselves. Um, and so you have these slayers that go off that are really on a suicidal mission, but they cannot just go off and lose a fight. They have to fight as well as they possibly can until they are bested, because you, only in that honorable battle are you going to regain your honor. Unfortunately, you regain the honor after you're dead, but um, yeah, there are slayers, and so one of the problems with slayers, of course, is that they tend to battle rage, and so um, if they go into their battle rage, they become just insane berserkers. But they will also attack allies, and many times they anything within 60 feet of them they want to do battle with, and they only stop once everything within 60 feet of them is dead. And so having a dwarven slayer as a friend can be problematic if you're an adventurer, because if they go into that battle rage, you might be the next ticket that gets punched. Along with the dwarves, they, like I said, they have created all of these, or many of these citadels and mines. Many of the mines and citadels, the dwarves are so old that throughout the Skellis mountain range and other mountain ranges of the known world, there are a lot of these mines and citadels that have been lost to time. Some calamity happens, usually in the form of something coming up from the underworld or from the mythic underworld. Um, Not always, but that's most common. And the tunnels collapse, and they're just lost to the ages. But the capital of the Dwarven realms is the citadel of Zlatoheim, and it is a large citadel. It is currently ruled by King Common Ston of the clan Ston, and the Ston clan has been in rulership of Zlatoheim actually for quite some time. Um, it is Zlatoheim. It was founded by the Stons. It was ruled shortly by another clan for a while, and the Stons came back into prominence, um, as you do through marriage and things of that nature. And today, Zlatoheim is really considered a major trade hub. The capital city of Zlatoheim. There are many other races can be found in Zlatoheim at any given time, and the reason is because it's considered the end point of the Eastern Tradeway, and that's not really true. But most people consider, the Eastern Tradeway goes from the nation of Erebachia all the way west into the Skellis Mountains, and the goal is to get to Zlatoheim. The reality is, though, that the Eastern Tradeway does continue past Zlatoheim and goes into it goes through the mountains of the Skellis Mountains and goes to the country of Stagina, and actually ends at the capital city of Stagina of Olafsveller. But most people don't consider Olafsveller to be a major hub, and we'll touch on Olafsveller and Stagina in a future episode, because they are entirely their own thing. So Zlatoheim, you can go in and you will find traders and merchants and craftspeople of a mishmash of races from all over. Erebachsian trader, humans, people from the Glossian Empire, Braunhaven region, You will find elves. In fact, the elves of the Sylvanas Forest actually have in Zlatoheim. They have a embassy that is actually located just to the northwest of on the northwest edge um, of the temple quarter, and it is an interesting embassy because there is a crack in the ceiling of the cavern that Zlatoheim is built in, and through this crack, always during the daytime, a shaft of sunlight comes down through this crack onto the ground. At night, a shaft of moonlight comes through this crack down onto the ground, and that is where the elves planted trees from the Sylvanas forest in the deep underground in this cavern, and those trees grew and they cultivated them to actually form the buildings of their embassy. And so there is a Sylvanas embassy in Zlatoheim. The elves there are, um, I'm sure that they would prefer to live elsewhere. It would be a political post, one that is much needed. Because, as I've stated in the past, dwarves and elves don't necessarily always see eye to eye, and it's not because of any animosity. It's more that the elves truly believe that to their core, that they are superior because of their long lives, because of all of the knowledge and wisdom that they amass throughout those long lives. Dwarves, on the other hand, take most of their statements as being arrogant and rude, and dwarves are much more grounded. Dwarves say what you mean and mean what you say. If you're gonna be rude, then just do it. You don't need to hide it with colorful language. Um, so the dwarves are in Zlatoheim. They are master craftsmen. Some of the especially axes and hammers. Axes and hammers are sought all over the known world by by other races seeking dwarven craftsmanship, because even by not just adventurers but even woodsmen seek dwarven hammers and all of their tools and their axes and things of that nature. And it is said that if given enough time, dwarves can craft just about anything. They can craft enchanted weaponry, armor, things of that nature. If they have the resources and they have the time to do it, they are the master craftsmen capable of making this stuff. Some of their stuff is even better than that of the elves. Really, the difference between items crafted by the dwarves and by the elves is functionality. The elves, while their stuff is functional, they are going to put a much heavier glint on artistic nature of the item, whereas dwarves are much more. They want the item to function first, and so any artistic accoutrements is going to be added after the fact. Dwarves are also master brewers and distillers, and of course they have dwarven ales, and many will say they are described as loving hearty food and strong drink. Most would describe dwarven ales as being strong to the point of extreme. And so other races that come to Zlatoheim and order a dwarven ale or a stout or any of that are going to probably need to make a con ability check, because they are so strong that they will be getting drunk quite quickly, or perhaps even a save versus poison. Now, one of the things that they do distill is dwarven whiskey, and there are varieties of wheat and grains that will grow underground with minimum of sunlight. These are brought up from the underworld. The dwarves of Zlatoheim do have trade that they do with the Duergar of the underworld, and some of these grains they have cultivated. The Duergar are much more favorable of mushrooms and fungus and lichen and mosses, things of that nature, but there are grains. And so dwarven whiskeys are a thing, and they are much sought after. The minimum age for a dwarven whiskey, and this is actually a law in Zlatoheim, is that in order for it to be considered a dwarven whiskey, it has to be distilled underground. It has to be made from grains from the underworld, and it has to be aged a minimum of 50 years. And so 50-year-old dwarven whiskey is considered bottom shelf. And though it is then aged in stone oak barrels, stone oak being a tree that dwarves are very masterful, elves somewhat too, but dwarves are very masterful at carving or cutting and shaping stone oak. And so what happens with stone oak is that it petrifies very quickly, whereas most wood you would cure it and let all the saps and whatnot out of it. With stone oak, that curing process actually petrifies it for the most part, and so you have to be quick, and you have to be very skilled. It is a very hard wood. You have to be very skilled in shaping it, and so the dwarves have been masters of making stone oak items for years. Another nature of the stone oak tree is that it is a leafy tree. The leaves that it grows are actually like a green, almost like a very thin metallic foil. And those leaves are used in a number of artistic endeavors by elves, especially, somewhat by dwarves, but mostly by elves. And they can be shaped into any number of items or used as decoration for things. And so this dwarven whiskey is then aged in stone oak barrels for 50 years, and it does come out at around 150 proof at that point. Of course, there are higher levels of dwarven whiskey that are aged longer and have a much smoother taste, and probably will kick your butt just a little bit more as far as alcohol content. But these are things that dwarves really prefer. Now, Zlatoheim, the Skillis Mountains, and this is particularly true for the Braunhaven region. This isn't true for dwarves all over the world, but in Zlatoheim, the primary coinage is the electrum piece called the Ellsworth. And the reason for this being that the Skillis Mountains are filled with electrum veins. There are a lot of electrum veins, and because of this, um, the Ellsworth coin has actually been adopted by neighboring regions. The Glossian Empire, the Ellsworth is actually their official electrum coin. It is not as common, of course, in the Glossian Empire, although you will tend to run into it. Um, and Stagina also uses the Ellsworth as their electrum piece. So these dwarves, they use electrum for a lot of their filigree, their artwork, and it is also their primary coin, whereas the gold piece is the primary coin of the Glossian Empire. Um, they typically worship the god Montes in his aspect as the Mountain Father. He is a big. The Mountain Father is the big to do in dwarven religion, but or at least in this region. And there are a number of other minor dwarvish deities that are specific to dwarves that are really in the Glossian Empire. You would kind of think of them. They're not really gods; they're saints. But the dwarves don't tend to make a whole lot of delineation. If you were able to do some of those miracles, then you must be some kind of deity. You're not. There's saints are not really a thing. You are one of godhood, and so there are a ton of these little minor dwarvish deities beneath Montes, but there are several temples. Finding a shrine or something to a minor deity is rare considered, or rare compared to the big temples to Montes that you'll find in Zlatoheim. So the Mountain Father is the big to do there. Now, the clerics of Montes uh, and the clergy will back adventuring expeditions that are going off in search of these many dwarven mines and citadels that have been lost throughout the centuries in the Skelos Mountains. And so you will see the Church of Montes basically putting out calls for adventures, and they don't care if they would prefer, of course, that it would be dwarves that are the ones going out on these quests, but they don't. That's not that's not a deal breaker if you're not a dwarf. They will hire just about anybody. All they're interested in is finding these lost mines and citadels, because to the dwarven mindset and being so focused on family and the clan, these represent entire gaps and holes in the dwarven history. The library at Castle Stawn is filled with tomes and tablets that relate tales of some of these clans that went off to start a new mine or the founding of a new citadel. But those are limited because they don't have the texts and tablets that were created at said mine or citadel because it is lost. And so there are entire holes in the dwarven history that the Church of Montes is huge on trying to fill those gaps, and so they put out calls for adventurers of all kinds. Beneath the, well, I was going to say beneath the world, the dwarves are already living in holes in the ground, but even deeper than that, you have the mythic underworld of the Duergar. And we will get into the Duergar on the next episode, detailing the Grey Dwarves of the underworld. And we'll talk about that next time. Thank you for watching.